Hey everybody, welcome to Black Lotus Live, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And tonight we have a very special guest with us, Mike Rickseker. And he's been with us before, and he's a paranormal investigator. And also tonight is the inaugural episode with Victoria Mundae. And so we are very happy to have her here. But speaking of guests, I want to share something with everybody. If I can get this stupid thing to work. There we go. We have some great guests coming up. This Thursday, we've got Preston Dennett. And then the following Sunday, we have Erica Lukes. We're going to try to get her back on. She's having some serious computer issues. And then the following Thursday, we've got Paul Wallace with us. And then the following Thursday after that, we have Les Velez and then Joshua Lewis on the following Thursday. So, yeah, definitely check us out for that. But anyway, so let's talk ghosts. First of all, I want to bring up the fact that you guys called it quits with Edge of the Rabbit Hole, and I got to say I'm very upset about this because I loved your show, but we got Victoria Mundae out of the deal. So.
You did.
Somebody take me.
So you're welcome.
So, well, Mike,
because Victoria's always been a fantastic co-hostess with me, almost 2 years running with her. Edge of the Rabbit Hole was around for a little over 6 years, and Victoria was a third of that. So thank you very much, Victoria. You were always wonderful.
Well, thank you, Mike.
So, Mike, what's going on with you that you needed to call it quits?
Yeah, Mike.
A lot, really. Yeah, there's a lot of projects going on. I've been doing. I got a lot of traveling that is set up, ready to go. Like this coming weekend. Well, this is the weekend, but next weekend, going to be in Wisconsin, Janesville, Wisconsin, for the Paranormal Metaphysical Expo there. Immediately followed by a flight out to New York to film a project, which I can't talk about. So there's a lot of things like that are going on. Of course, I'm doing a lot more with the tours. We have Ireland this year in July. Still a few tickets left. People want to join us. And then next year.
Talk to us about that Ireland.
Yeah.
What exactly are you doing?
Yeah, so we're hitting a lot of different castles. So we're doing like Rock of Cashel, Blarney Castle, Lep Castle, Charleville. So we have 3 different paranormal investigations that are set up during this time. We're going to be there July 1st through the 9th. We're going to be investigating Lep Castle, Charleville Castle, and also we have an entire overnight at Spike Island, which is really like the Alcatraz of Ireland. So a lot of great stuff. Drumbeggstone Circle. So this is called Ancient Mysteries of Ireland with Mike Rickseker Tour. That's through Mysterious Adventures Tours. And like I said, we have a handful of tickets left. So if people want to jump on board, that would be awesome.
Right, great.
Wow. That would be so cool.
That sounds so cool, really. Yeah, I would love to do something like that.
Me too.
So, for those of you who don't
Victoria
know,
was supposed to go.
I was, but hijinks ensued. But you forgot about Jameson. You're going to Jameson one night too.
Oh yeah, Jameson Distillery. Yep.
And then a haunted ghost tour of Cork. Was it Cork?
Yeah, we'll be doing the haunted ghost tour of Cork. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in store.
Well, if you're going to the Jameson Distillery, that's worth the price of the ticket in and of itself.
Which is also supposed to be haunted. So,
Oh, is it?
You get both types of spirits there.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't know, Mike is somewhat of an expert on shadow people. And he talked to us about our own shadow person that we had dwelling in our house, who is no longer here, thank God. But yeah, he's written how many books about shadow people?
Well, one specifically on shadow people, 12 books in total.
Oh, okay.
And the latest was Alaska's Mysterious Jungle. But yeah, the one, A Walk in the Shadows, a Complete Guide to Shadow People. It's in its second edition, and also just released the audiobook a couple months ago. And what's interesting about the audiobook is I added more content to the audiobook than I had already in the second edition, which caused me to go back and kind of sneak in about 10 more pages to the actual print edition. So people that are getting the book now, that are buying the book now, actually have a little bit more of an updated version than those that bought it last year.
Cool.
Wow.
You also have a documentary by the same name, isn't it?
The Shadow Dimension, yeah. The Shadow Dimension, it's a 6-part documentary. It's been running free on Tubi for almost a year. So just go to Tubi TV, which you can load that up as an app on your television or phone, or you can just go to their website. It's also streaming at a few other locations like FilmZ, Zuzu, which is a Canadian service, and it's going to be coming out on some other platforms like Zumo and other locations.
I like Tubi. I just got introduced to Tubi not too long ago, but they're pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a great platform. They have a great variety of shows and movies. It's ad generated, so yeah, you're going to get some commercials in there, but you can find a lot of stuff out there that you can't elsewhere, especially like some classic television. I got into a little bit of a Hercules and Xena kick some months ago, and they're running both on Tubi.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Xena.
Please
Xena's
watch
little
Shadow
side-
Dimension first.
Xena's little sidekick friend. I forget her name.
Oh,
She went to my high school.
Really?
Oh.
So okay. Renee O'Connor.
We're having some
We're having some
feedback.
feedback issues.
That's
Is that for me?
I think it is.
Yeah, because you kind of popped on and then we had the issue. So
Okay, I think whatever you did, you fixed it, I think. So talk to us about some of your paranormal investigations.
What's
you
your
got a
favorite?
specific kind? My favorite. Oh, jeez. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, so that's kind of that's a hard question to answer. So,
What about the one where I think you were in an abandoned church or something, and you saw some round spidery thing? Was that what it was?
so well, yeah. The spidery thing was at a different location than the abandoned church. The abandoned church was Black Bear Church out in Olive Township, Oklahoma, and investigated out there several times. A fantastic and fascinating location. So it's off a dirt road, really out in the middle of nowhere. There's one time we were driving down there at night, and there was just a herd of cows all over the road. So to get back there can be challenging sometimes. But what's interesting is that the church has a really, really dark feeling to it. And then across the dirt road from the church is a cemetery, which actually has a much, much lighter feeling to it. And there are these rumors within the church of a crawler that exists there. And we had investigated there several times, hadn't seen it. There's also supposed to be some short, shadow beings there that gather up along the windows. And the legend is that the crawler was conjured up by people practicing, some nefarious things, black magic. They're doing some occult rituals back there, and they conjured up the crawler along with these shorter shadow entities that are supposed to be like its minions. And the abandoned church would be the domain of the crawler, and then these shorter shadow entities are just really kind of protecting the outside but aren't allowed inside, which is kind of interesting.
What
Really
does the crawler look like?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second here. We never really saw that setup where crawler inside and then the shadow entities outside. But there was this one particular evening where we finally did see the crawler. And we were downstairs in the basement area of the church, which is just really like a single room. And, we're just doing some basic EVP sessions, things like that. And all of a sudden we see this shadow kind of slip through one of the windows. I mean, all the windows are busted out. It kind of slips through one of them and just starts circling us along the walls and along the ceiling. It's very, very fast. And basically all you're really seeing are these long spindly arms and legs. And again, very, very fast. It was circling the walls, on the ceiling. It hit some bottle that was on the floor because that got knocked across the room. Hit the railing at some point because you heard this ding as it hit the railing. Our electronic equipment started going crazy. We're getting all this static on the equipment, and again, we're out in the middle of nowhere. Your cell phones are off, but yet we're getting all this crazy static. So the medium that was with us at the time said, "Well, why don't we try, like singing some hymns, that sort of thing, kind of lighten the atmosphere," which we did, and ended up slipping right back out that window. So it was really, really interesting evening.
We have a panelist with us on occasion named Michael Roser, and he has his own channel, DarkHour Paranormal, and he was a paranormal investigator for a while, and he finally stopped because he got freaked out with one spirit who attached itself to him and wouldn't let him go.
Oh.
Have you ever had anything like that happen to you?
I haven't really had attachments like that in kind of the classical sense, where something that follow you home and doesn't want to leave you alone. I've known other people that have had that happen. Anytime that I've walked out of an investigation, I felt like something was following me out, I just turn around and say, "Nope, you're not allowed to come with me." So, yeah, I don't think I've ever brought anything home. Although my kids, when I was investigating 10, 12 years ago, they thought that I had, because the one light in our living room would just suddenly pop on, and but I ended up deducing that was my grandfather, not something that followed me home. But yeah, I haven't had anything really attached to me like that. I'll go to locations
Do you do
where
any protection?
I don't. But basically, my protection is okay. Here's my belief on protection. Whatever you believe is going to work for you will work, as long as you. It's all about intention. People have different belief systems. So somebody that's a Buddhist, they're probably not going to take in a Christian cross or something like that into a paranormal investigation and believe that that's going to work for them. But I believe as long as you have that intention, a belief that whatever you're going to do, whatever you're going to bring into that investigation is going to work and protect you, that intention is really what is protecting you into that investigation. So what's always worked for me over the years is, and every once in a great while, I've said a little prayer beforehand, but I usually don't. Just this inherent sense that I'm going to go in there, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to be protected. And if I start walking out and I feel something following me turn around telling it, "No, you need to stay here," it will listen.
That makes a lot of sense, because what if you have a crucifix or a rosary or a cross or holy water or something to protect you, and then it gets taken away from you, or you lose it, or you can't find it, or you no longer protected? It's totally all about the intention.
Right, it is. And we've done cleansings of households, and what's really important is for the the family that's actually living there to believe that, okay, what we're doing here is going to rid us of this entity. Well, if they're just throwing out some examples, if they're a Christian household and we come in with some Native American rituals, that might not exactly work for them. But somebody who's of that belief system, or is very open to let's bring in those different rituals and those practices, and they inherently believe it is going to work, then it has a much greater chance of working.
Do you think go ahead, Ralph.
I was going to say that makes total sense. That's all. Go ahead.
Oh, my question was, would that work for something a little more intense, like let's say alien abductions, like something really physical and traumatic? Do you think that same ideology or thinking would help protect somebody?
Yeah, I believe so. So, alien abductions, a lot of these things are related. So, like, a lot of your shadow experiences have very, very similar characteristics to ET abductions. They may even be one of the same thing, because some of these shadows are actually ETs and vice versa.
Right.
But we've been on intense cases where the case that was featured on The Haunted years ago, which was a red-eyed shadow entity that was appearing in her closet. Got very physical, got violent during the cleansing, where it actually punched her in the gut. Got an EVP right at that moment that said die. We had the back door that was blowing open constantly, which we had to deadbolt shut because it would just keep blowing up. So all these different crazy things were going on, and we were doing a Christian cleansing because that was their belief system, and we were able to drive that out, even with the wind was swirling and howling and all this crazy stuff, and they've been perfectly fine ever since then.
Okay.
That's an interesting question, what you said a minute ago. Can you do protection to keep you from being abducted by aliens? I'd never even thought about that before.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit, because you're talking about something that is probably a physical entity. So it kind of depends on how is the ET, accessing your locale. If it's physical, if they are coming here in a spaceship and they're walking into your house, that's more physical security sort of thing. But if they're doing something like projecting across the cosmos, like we do with astral projection, if they're projecting their consciousness across the universe to try to access where you are, then I think you could put up more of a spiritual type of protection, because that has more to do with resonance and frequency and vibration than it does, a physical intrusion.
Well, that'd be the same with, with black-eyed kids, because they said they can't come into your home unless you invite them in.
Yeah, black-eyed kids are that's a whole different can of worms. We're talking, and I do believe that those are interdimensional beings, but I believe they're accessing our world. Maybe it's through some sort of portal or whatever. And they're physically entering our domain. And the whole thing of why they can't be invited in, we're a little sketchy onto why that is. But very, very different than some of these other entities that, people have had ET encounters or shadow people or encounters. They freely walk right in, or they appear in your room or whatever, where with black-eyed children, they strangely have to have that permission.
I just wanted to mention that I think it is important to categorize these phenomenon, because I think, and we talked about this last time that you were on with shadow people, I think that some phenomenon are caused by different things, but they appear to be the same. It's like, I gave this example before. Let's say someone's in the ocean and from a distance, they see what they think is a dolphin. They go back out the next day, they think they see the same dolphin, but it's actually a shark. They think it's the same thing just because it superficially looks similar. But in fact, they're very different animals. So that abduction, I think some of the abductions are spiritual, some of them are interdimensional, but I do believe a subset of them are completely physical. They probably are just extraterrestrial visitors. And so the idea that you could stop them just with your intention, that would mean that you could also stop a human abducting you. Let's say your neighbor down the street was just abducting you, that is probably just as physical as some alien abductions. And so perhaps, the intention wouldn't work in that case, because I don't think it would work if you could just, if your intention was strong to have your neighbor stop abducting you, perhaps it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, a physical abduction by my neighbor, they're going to get my attention real quick once I smack them over the head with a baseball bat. So,
right.
But you have a sword back there.
Yes, it's a ceremonial dagger, but I mean, I suppose
it's a ceremonial abduction. Come on,
but yeah, you're right. I mean, we're talking about a variety of different things. So when I get asked the question, okay, what's a shadow person? It's like, well, that's a whole can of worms, because there's a lot of different kinds, a lot of different varieties. Not just their physical appearance, but also how they're accessing our world. Whether it's they can be human spirits that don't fully manifest. They can be interdimensional beings. They can be ETs. They could be astral projections. They can be all of these different things. So there's a lot more we have to investigate and learn about a particular shadow entity than to just say, oh, it's a shadow entity, so it's it's this. No, there's a lot more to it.
Okay, so you don't have like shadow be gone spray.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
It is interesting that some of these abductions or some of these negative things can be stopped. It's promising, and it's interesting that some of these negative attachments, negative phenomenon in a household can be stopped relatively inexpensively and relatively easily just like you said, by your intention, by a ritual, by an artifact, just your intention behind the actions or the items, which is very inexpensive to do, and it's not hard to do either. That's promising. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it just takes a little bit of time. If you want some holy water and burn a candle or something like that, it's not that expensive. You're right, and then it's really the intention behind it all.
I mentioned that we had a shadow person in our house, and he would hang out in the hallway that's adjacent to our living room. And I mentioned this before, but bears repeating. We all would see it. My wife, Ralph, even our cat would see this thing. And you would just see it for a split second out of the corner of your eye, but it was there, and it would leave behind this just really negative energy. And I got so accustomed to seeing it that when I would see it, I'd say, "Oh, hey."
Yeah.
Well, and then somebody told me, "Don't do that because that's what they're feeding off of. They're feeding off of your attention." And then I have a really good friend of mine who's a psychic medium, and she did a reading on this thing. And she told me that it thought of me as its warden, that I was keeping it there. And she said, so the next time you see it, if you don't want this thing around anymore, the next time you see it, just offer it love and light and tell it, you don't need to be here. I'm not keeping you here. I don't know why you think that, but I'm not. And so you're free to leave. And it's been almost over 2 years now since it's been gone.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
and
so like you said, it's all about intention,
Right. Yeah, it is. And the idea of you're saying hello to it, so it's feeding on that. I mean, that sounds like it's coming more from a person who believes, like all shadow entities are evil. I mean, I did the same thing when I was a kid, and we had this shadow person when we were moving into this house in Worcester, Ohio, and the first 3 or 4 months, this thing kept showing up in my doorway. It was kind of a humanoid shape, very translucent, and it would show up as I was like unpacking boxes, putting things away, and I turn and look, and it would take off down the hall. And this happened, many times over the first several days that we were there. I asked my mother about it. She's like, "Yeah, I've actually seen the same thing," but she didn't seem very alarmed about it. And because she didn't seem alarmed about it, I was like, "Oh, okay, Mom's all right with this." So I started calling him Tom, like peeping Tom, because he would always peep in my door. And so I'd see him in the doorway and say, "Hi, Tom," and off he'd go. But yeah, that interaction only lasted for like 3 or 4 months, and then never saw him again, for the next 5 years that I was there until I graduated high school. So yeah, I don't think it was feeding off my attention, but the fact that you gave yours, this love and light and said, "Hey, you're free to go. You don't have to stick around here." That's a more positive type of intention you've put out to that. And maybe that's all it was looking for was, permission to go.
We also have a spirit of a cat that is with us, and
Only one.
only one. The nice thing about this one is that it's not that annoying like our other cat. And we don't have to feed it. So, but it presents no problem to us. I mean, we can feel it. I experience it mainly here in the studio, and you can feel it rubbing up against your leg, and sometimes I'll feel it jump up on the bed and that kind of thing. It meows down the hallway.
Yeah, I hear it meowing more than anything.
Yeah, and our own cat plays with it. She'll be lying on the couch, and suddenly she'll, how cats do, they sit up on their hind legs and stare down the hallway, and she'll speed off. And I've followed her a couple of times, and she's at the end of the hall batting at something. So she plays with this thing. And so I know that she'll never be lonely if we're not here. So
There you go.
but we had Rob Guttrow on not too long ago, and he's known as the pet medium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And So, and he was talking to us about his experiences with pets in the afterlife. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Yeah, I've seen like some shadow cats and things like that. And Rob is a very good friend of mine. I've known him for about 10 years now, and he actually,
He's a great guy.
yeah, he is. And I invited him because I have a chapter in my book, A Walk in the Shadows, on shadow animals, and so I invited him to include a section in there on his experiences with shadow animals. Like, so there's some stories in there about shadow dogs, shadow cats, that sort of thing. Where I've seen shadow type animals have been like at cemeteries. Like I've seen a lot of, what I believe were shadow cats at a couple of different cemeteries, and it's not like it was, you could distinctly see, four legs and the head and the tail and all that. It was more of like, it was about the size of, what a cat would be, and would kind of slink around trees like a cat would. So it's like, okay, it's some sort of shadow form. It's acting feline in nature. So, maybe that's a shadow cat. But Rob has seen them where they're just, full blown, okay, it's a shadow of a dog. Or he's even seen them, half and half, where it's half apparition, half shadow. So he has some, phenomenal stories about that.
So you bring up cemeteries and spirits, and people say that they've seen spirits in cemeteries. And I'm kind of thinking, why would they be in a cemetery? why wouldn't they be at the place they died or the place they lived?
Yeah, I don't think they're hanging out at cemeteries all the time. I don't think, there's like a party going on in the cemetery or whatever. But I believe they do visit from time to time for a variety of different reasons. One, if somebody else in the family passes away, they know all the family is going to be there at the cemetery. So they may be coming back to, pay their respects as, this family member is being buried. Or I think there are a lot of times in which, when you're at a cemetery visiting, somebody's grave or whatever, and they hear you talking about them, I think that that message, that communication extends across the universe to wherever they're at, and they catch on that, hey, somebody's there talking about me, at my grave, and they'll go and visit. I've had that happen before, where we'd noticed this family. All the headstones are set up, and we noticed that the three boys died really young, and the two girls had lived into adulthood. And we're verbally talking about all of this. Hadn't been any paranormal activity beforehand, but all of a sudden, we start hearing whispers, and all this other stuff starts going on after we had started talking about these people and doing research. Because after that happens, like, okay, that was interesting. Who was this family? Starting to do research. And they had lived like right down the road, a couple of blocks, not that far away. They had were farmers and bred horses and things like that. So, I mean, they could have been, down at the old homestead, heard us talking about them, and came on down to visit.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because my best friend died when we were 27. She's buried not too far from here. And whenever we talk about her and we laugh and we giggle, I'm like, oh, remember when she did this and we did that, or we go see her at her grave, there's always a disembodied, like, phantom smell of berries. And we figured it out one day. It's an old smell. You smell it and you're like, what is that? It's actually the same smell as the Bartles and James Wildberry wine coolers.
Oh my gosh.
So we know she's
That's
there,
awesome.
because that's such a unique smell. You never forget it. Yeah. Well, not that I've consumed it.
Sarah, I can't see her last name. Yusuf?
Yusuf.
Yusuf. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. She's asking, do you think that self-awareness is necessary to become a spirit?
I mean, when when you pass away, all that's left is your spirit form. So, self-awareness would be helpful if you're trying to communicate with somebody that's still amongst the living. So, there are many people who pass away, they're in a spirit form, but don't necessarily realize that they're dead, and so try to carry on with life as usual, which they may or may not be we may or may not see them or have an interaction with them or what have you. But I think ones that are more self-aware and are trying to communicate, those are the ones that we're getting more feedback and interaction from. But yeah, when you pass away, you're in your spirit form.
Mike, I have a question. So it's an idea that I've toyed around with. Is the question is this: do you think that wherever we are on this planet, we're constantly surrounded by like a shadow realm? So in other words, there are shadow beings around us at all times. We just simply cannot perceive them for whatever reason.
There's definitely more around us than we actually see and perceive. I mean, honestly, our eyes only see into a certain spectrum of light. So there are other things beyond that and either end of the spectrum. So there are certainly things within that. I also believe this is going to take us down a rabbit hole. But Victoria's heard this many times. She knows where I'm going. So I believe that all time, past, present, future is happening concurrently at the same time. So our idea of time, it's just a human construct to kind of explain our reality, keep track of the seasons, when to plant and harvest and all that sort of thing. But it's all happening concurrently. If you imagine, where you're sitting right now, and every moment that has happened, is happening, and will happen is all kind of stacked up on top of each other. And then for whatever reason, we don't know what the catalyst is, that two moments in time will suddenly start resonating in the same frequency, and we'll get a glimpse, whether it's the past or the future. You hear like some of these different time slips and moments where people they're interacting with a spirit or a ghost, but that spirit or ghost looks at them as if they're the ghost, almost kind of like out of the others. So I believe that's happening a lot as far as like other dimensions and things like that. We certainly have that sort of thing going on, which you could even say, that time slip or whatever is almost like an interaction with another dimension. But I believe that there are definitely many, many things going on around us that we just can't possibly perceive. And now, you have all these studies coming out of, like a parallel universe with time running and, in reverse and things like that. So it's like, well, okay, are some of these things we're witnessing that? So there's a lot of possibilities here.
So my follow-up question would be, where would you, if you had to give me a breadcrumb, let's say I wanted to invent a machine similar to a microscope, which allows us to see the micro world, which we normally cannot see, or a telescope, which lets us see celestial bodies with detail, which we normally can't do. If you could give me a breadcrumb, how would we develop a similar tool to help us see these entities that we can normally not see? How can we get there?
Yeah, I don't think it's with a machine.
Okay.
When a lot of our science fiction movies where we travel in time, it's like a DeLorean, a flux capacitor, or some other sort of machine where we're getting into another point in time. And even our theoretical physicists are like, well, we need a lot of energy to be able to travel in time if we were to do it. And they talk about getting close to a black hole and things like that. It's like, you get close to a black hole, you're gonna get torn apart. So I think what it really boils down to is consciousness. I believe our consciousness can take us to and from different points in time and different points in reality. And there are times where we get glimpses of that. Again, we don't really know what the catalyst is, but if we were to try to harness that and try to, I think it has more to do with like project ourselves into that point in time. Because if every moment in time is working on some sort of frequency or some sort of vibration, it's a matter of being able to access that frequency or vibration. I think that has more to do with the mind. If you're familiar with the movie Somewhere in Time, which is based off the book by Richard Matheson, Bid Time Return, very, very interesting concept where he actually wills his consciousness into the past. I think it's going to have more to do with that, more to do with consciousness than it has to do with a DeLorean, a flux capacitor sort of thing.
Okay, that makes sense. So perhaps a meditation would be a start to get your consciousness to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Meditation would certainly have a lot to do with it. People are already able to do amazing things when they meditate. When they talk about astral projection or accessing the Akashic records and things like that. People are able to have premonition, see the future when they meditate. So I think that has a lot more to do with it.
And I also wanted to say that Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was thinking the show Quantum Leap. What if all time has a certain vibrational frequency? You can figure out what that is, turn a little knob to 98.3 megahertz or whatever, and zip back over there. Or is it not even that simple?
Let's build a machine and do it. I mean, but
Okay.
I think it has more to do with setting your body to that frequency rather than setting a machine to that frequency. So if you can figure out how to tune your body. Okay. So Victoria, you've heard the story with Tom McNicholas, when we saw the rolling black smoke morph into the little girl. There were 5 of us there. And we all saw that little girl a little bit of a different form. So like I saw her fully formed from the head down to about her knees, and she started to dissipate away. Others saw her fully formed at the feet and then on up, and then she started to dissipate away toward her head. And so the question then becomes, okay, why is that? Well, the human body works within a certain frequency range, but everybody's a little bit different. Of course, the entity itself, the little girl, had her own frequency as well. So it's a matter of like trying to get in tune to that. So if we can learn how to manipulate our own body resonance, I think that would have a lot more to do with being able to access these other times, these other worlds and dimensions and things like that.
It could be that when one,
and that could be like the, places like Stonehenge and things like that, where they may have been using those ancient sites of power to tune their bodies to certain frequencies.
yeah, I was just going to say that perhaps when we're meditating to get to these to get to these different places, view things we normally can't do, perhaps what we're doing is we are changing the vibration of our consciousness. Perhaps that is what the end effect of meditation is.
Well,
So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, when you meditate, you are changing your body frequency to some degree or another, and that's why you're able to see and experience some of these different things. Absolutely.
And I just want to talk about that. What you said about time happening all at once. It does make a lot of sense to me. And the way I've thought about it is, let's imagine 1 week ago. Okay, that sliver of time. Well, 1 week ago exists as the past for us. So it's right now. It's the past. But if you were experiencing 1 week ago, it was also the present. And if you were to experience 2 weeks ago, it was the future. So any point of time, it always exists as all three at the same time. This moment right now is currently the present, but now it's the past, and it will be the future if we were to go back a week. So it exists as all three at the same time. I see that very simply. Yeah, I do agree with that.
Absolutely.
Mike, we've had several people on the show who experienced near-death experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then, they experience the light and all of their life review, and then they come back. So that leads me to the question, do you think that the spirits that we see are stuck here, or are they here out of choice?
Both. I do believe some are stuck here and they don't understand about going on and moving on and that sort of thing. I think some, like my grandfather, he elected to stay here for a time until my grandmother passed away. Several members of the family were being visited by him after he passed, and then once my grandmother passed away, he was gone. So it just made total sense to us. Okay, he hung out around here until grandma passed away, then they went on together. So I think it's both.
I agree.
Has he come back, your grandfather?
I've had dream visitations with my grandparents. One that I know specifically was a visitation. Another that I know that was just a dream. So they've only in that sense through dream visitation.
Okay.
Interesting.
So, Kimberly, why don't you weigh in on this a little bit?
No, I agree with what he has to say. I mean, that's why I didn't jump in there, but definitely everything he has said so far, I totally agree with.
So Kimberly knows somebody who is experiencing an incubus. And and she made it go away, and then she invited it back, which I think is kind of a pretty stupid move, honestly.
Yeah, just a little.
What are your thoughts on Ikebae and Succubi? Are they evil?
They certainly.
I realize they're not really spirits. I mean, they're
They never walk
entities.
the earth as a human form. They're definitely some of the more nefarious type of entities that are out there. The fact that you invited it back is certainly concerning. I've been on cases where there was an incubus or succubus involved, and those are very harrowing cases. And so these things do exist, and what I try to do in my writing, the videos and all that stuff is try to kind of explain to people what the differences are, just because I've had people reach out, well, I have a demon in my house. Okay, well, why do you think you have a demon in your house? Well, because a vase or a candle or whatever got tossed off the mantle. It's like, well, okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a demon. We need to investigate a little bit further and try to figure out what exactly it is. Maybe someone's just trying to get your attention, or whatever. That's what I try to do. But there are definitely evil entities within the universe. With good you have bad. It's
what do you think they want? What's their intention?
Good question. So I think each one has their own individual need, want, desire, their own intention. They each have their own agenda going on. When somebody asks, okay, what do the hat wearing entities want? It's like, well, I'd have to ask that specific hat man what he wants. There are certainly energy vampires. So the idea of somebody, something coming in, feeding off that energy, that sort of thing, that does happen. Some of these are just a pissed off human spirit that want to make other people's lives miserable. That happens too. So it really depends on the particular entity.
I just want to say I want to change the term. I want to change the term energy vampire to energy milker, because energy vampire is too cool, and I don't think they're actually, they're just, I think it's more like they're milking us for our fear. I'm sorry, Kim, go ahead.
That has some weird visuals to it.
It does.
What about Psyvamp?
Yeah.
Psyvamps.
Knowing me, I could have gave the visual. That's the bad part. As far as the shadow people, I don't really recall anybody actually trying to make conversation with them, and just like you said, they're not all, evil. Just like there's other spirits that are dark and everybody considers them evil, but until that you actually find out their sole purpose or whatever, you don't know, and also the vibrational level that they'll give off as well.
To address your as far as like communication with a shadow entity, I mean, they don't have traditional mouth voice box sort of thing. So to try to have a verbal conversation like that is a little bit you're usually not going to get something that's very vocal. However, people do report getting some sort of thought transfers from these entities. Some sort of telepathy is happening on occasion with these entities.
Exactly.
What would keep a shadow person around? What variable would keep it there longer and longer?
I mean, again, it depends on the shadow. Some are, one seemed to be, I don't know. I mean, I have so many different stories here. What can I pull from? This one particular hat wearing entity, it would always come in. There were 3 girls who slept in a bedroom together with this family, and it would come into the bedroom, would always stand at the foot of the bed of the one, just stand there and stare. And it did this like all the time. They lived in the house for several years. They ended up, moving out of the house. And you asked about attachments earlier. Apparently, that one wasn't attached to the family because it didn't follow them to the next house. So then you'd have to, follow up with the new family that moved in and find out if it was still going on. But it seemed like it was more assigned to that room to do what? We don't know. Are they, because some of them seem to be, just watching, observing, studying humanity. For what purposes, we don't know. For how long are they assigned to that location to keep studying? I mean, it all depends on, the particular shadow. Some are, human spirits that it was once their house that they lived in, and so they're just kind of going about continuing
Right.
to live. Some are like a one and done. My very first shadow person experience was just, it shown up in the middle of the night in my bedroom, interacted with me, took off, and never saw the thing again in that house.
What is the maximum time you've recorded or observed or read about a shadow person? Let's just call it infestation.
I mean, you're talking about like as far as like watching and observing that particular moment, or just the entire time it's there?
Oh, I mean like people have, what's the longest period you've known that people have reported seeing it? Not at one stretch, not like 1 hour stretch. I just mean like weeks, months. Is there a limit, or can they just
Years,
stay there
decades? I mean, some of these are constantly there. I mean, a great one that is like, okay, what exactly is this thing? Is it's a famous haunting, the house on Gay Street that in New York's Greenwich Village that Walter B. Gibson, who under the pen name Maxwell Grant wrote The Shadow pulp novels from the 1930s. And after he moved out, people that moved in they were seeing this, shadowy hat wearing entity throughout the house, especially in the hallway for some reason. But, they would see it throughout the house. And, several paranormal investigators came out, including Hans Holzer, and many people, believe that, okay, maybe this is, the spirit of a Revolutionary War soldier. It kind of has a bit of a look like that, we think. Walter B. Gibson and John Keel, who wrote the Mothman prophecies, came out and said, no, this isn't a Revolutionary War soldier. The haunting wasn't even going on until, after Gibson left. And what they believed was that because Gibson's put so much energy into writing these stories that it was, self-manifested from Gibson, that it's what we would call a tulpa, or the Buddhist idea of the thought form, that he created a sentient being that came off as this shadowy form because that was his character, and it's been there for decades.
Right.
He created by
out here.
intent.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about intention earlier. That was intent.
We have a couple that are out here in Old Town Spring that have been there for decades. There's one that's the really pissed off man, and the one I talked to you about in the shadow dimension, the headless guy who's very protective and kind and nice. So those guys have been there. Me personally, I've known of them at least 20 years. I'm sure they've been there much, much longer.
Mr. Crowley asks, he says, my question, what's up with the hat worldwide? And yeah, you see this entity. I mean, there's reports of it all over the place.
Again, I keep going back to this. It depends on the entity. The one that we just talked about, it's a hat wearing shadow entity, but it's manifested through as a thought form. So it's only in that particular case only because that was the way he designed his character. We see other ones that are wearing the fedora type of hat, sometimes with or without the trench coat, sometimes the top hat with or without the cape. I've even heard of a story of one time where it was an archer style hat, like something out of Robin Hood. But you also hear wide brimmed hats in these other ones. So, a lot of people think that they're trying to mimic humans, that they're trying to take some sort of form that humans may become familiar with. Or there's even an idea that the hat is actually some type of technology, that there's actually technology hidden under the hat that is powering their form. So there's a lot of different ideas, and we don't know specifically for sure.
That's the first time I heard that idea. That's interesting.
Yeah, I read something.
Yeah, I never did.
I read something similar
form
about
of transportation.
I read something similar about halos. Angels are seen with halos, but the idea was that perhaps the halo was actually maybe like a helmet, not actually just like this little, angels are supposed to have a halo. Perhaps it's some kind of technology that they were using. and we just called it a halo.
Yeah, there are ideas like that about angels too, or that or that is some sort of energy source.
Isn't that like their aura?
These ideas are out there.
Also, sorry, but that could be also their aura, right? Because they're like shiny and gold and silver and different colors.
Yeah, the idea of the shining ones, and so there's a lot of different theories into these things that we're trying to make sense of.
I've heard that shadow people and like the Hat Man are attracted to negative energy. So, for instance, if somebody in the family has anxiety or PTSD or something like that, that's why they show up for some reason. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, we talked about energy vampires earlier. So it may be something like that, or it could be a loved one that has come. They see that their relative is going through something traumatic. They could actually be coming to try to comfort. So it may not be a negative thing. It may be something that is just trying to be positive, and people are seeing it as a shadow because it can't like fully manifest as an apparition, or it may not even realize as manifesting in some sort of physical form at all.
Another question for you, Mike, is since you're so well versed, you've studied this for so long, these esoteric topics. As we've come to the conclusion tonight that there's a lot we just don't know. A lot of it is we're just thinking, perhaps is this, perhaps is that. So my question is, what can we do to find out the truth, like to actually understand these concepts better? I know we could take reports down, listen to them, observe them, try to find out what the similarities are. But apart from that, what can us as humans do to get a firmer grasp on what is actually going on?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing is more investigation. So when you're out on investigation, you're seeing some of this phenomenon. Try to have a conversation with it, try to get more information because it's not like you can capture the thing and then interrogate it. You're not going to get a blood sample. That's not happening. So it really comes down to us doing our due diligence. That when we see something like this manifest, to get as much information about the scenario as possible, and if you can communicate with it, try to get as much information out of it as possible.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's one of the reasons why science doesn't take the paranormal seriously, is because I believe a big part of understanding and studying the paranormal doesn't have anything to do with science. It actually has to do with counterintelligence work, basically what spies do. Being a spy hunter. And a lot of scientists, they don't do that. If you're studying deer or fish, you don't have to do any counterintelligence work. You just have to go out there and observe it. But with these paranormal phenomenon, I do believe we have to do some counterintelligence work, which is what you were saying, like interviewing it, trying to understand it better.
Yeah, it's a lot more psychological in nature. So, I believe in, like, on a paranormal investigation, I believe going in with as much information about the location, the people who live there as possible, because I can use that as information to try to talk to these people if that's who's there. Great example is, we were investigating an old World War II hangar that had airplanes within it that had flown during the war. And so we're in this one particular airplane. We're trying to do a EVP session. We've got, K2 meters and all that stuff set up, and we're getting nothing. And, they're kind of the basic generic questions, is there anybody here with us? That sort of stuff. People are asking those types of questions. So finally I say, hey, I spent some time in the Air Force, which I know came out of the old Army Air Corps, which I know you would have flown for. And then all of a sudden we start getting some interaction. And so just the fact that I was able to start to build a little bit of a rapport, like, hey, I also, was in the service. That really opened up a lot for us, that we learned that this was actually the navigator of the airplane when it was flown during the war. So it's a lot more psychological in nature. It's a lot more, you're building a rapport with these different entities, and that's when you start getting better interactions, at least for me.
That's great.
Absolutely.
So what I'd like to know is, what started you into this field? What was the very first thing that happened to you that you said something's up?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, that first shadow person experience that I had.
That was your first experience?
Well, yeah, first significant experience. There were a couple of things that may have happened when I was a little bit younger, but it's kind of like I was almost too young to really recall it distinctly. It's like it seemed like that was something, but yeah, I was about 8 years old when I woke up in the middle of the night and there was this tall, dark figure standing in the corner of my bedroom. So
Right.
that was the first significant experience. But what really hit me as, okay, this is something I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life was my first little paranormal investigation. I had no idea it was, you would actually call it an investigation at the time. I was only about 15 years old. My friend David and I, we were at our friend Lori's house, and we're just, we're young. We're just shooting the breeze, talking teenage drama sort of stuff. It's an older house that was in the downtown area of the town that we lived at. And all of a sudden, Lori says, well, I think my house is haunted. So David and I are like, oh, this is interesting. So she starts telling us about some of the different things that happen in the house, the old family cemetery in the backyard, that sort of thing. Her main concern was that her one wall in her bedroom upstairs, she couldn't keep anything tacked on it, like, posters and things like that. And, she could put it up there and it would, an hour later, day, week, whatever, it would always fall down. She couldn't keep anything up on this wall. So she thought the wall was haunted. So, all right, we're going to go up and we're going to investigate this wall in her bedroom. So we go up there and we're taking a look at the room, taking a look at the wall. Lori's telling us some more stories about stuff that happens in the house. And I didn't know this about David at the time, but he's an extremely, extremely sensitive guy. And he put his hand flat to the wall like that, just pressed it right on there. And all of a sudden he turned this bright, bright red. It starts sweating profusely. And I'm looking at David like, oh my gosh, what in the world's happening with my friend? And he starts going like wall to wall in the house to see if there are like any other hot spots like this. And that was the moment that I knew that, okay, this is absolutely fascinating. And I knew some way, shape, or form I was going to be involved in this field. I didn't even know it was a field at the time, but somehow, some way, I'm going to be, checking this stuff out and learning more about it.
I've always had a question, and I've never really asked you. You've always said things like, your mother was supportive and everything, but your dad's a skeptic, sort of.
Yeah.
A skeptic who believes, but he won't admit that he believes. Did your mom ever have any paranormal experiences that she ever told you about?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's the stuff that's come out over the years that she's had experiences. Well, I mean, like that shadow person at the house that we moved into in Worcester when I was 13 years old. She admitted that she saw that shadow. After I moved out, went to the Air Force a few years later, they built a new house outside of town, kind of out in the country. And my mom told me that she frequently experienced Native American spirits within that house.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
But your dad didn't believe it, right?
My dad's funny because he's like, oh, I don't believe in ghosts. And then he'll go ahead and tell a story about one time he's in bed, wakes up in the middle of the night, and there's this tall, dark figure walking through the doorway into the room. And he's like, I don't know who the F you are, but you need to get the F out of the house. And the thing took off. And I'm like, Dad, that's a ghost story. He's like, nah.
It's all about
okay,
intention. Yeah.
Fine. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but I want to make another announcement about our upcoming guests throughout April. And so if I can get this thing to share. I always have problems with this.
They have you push so many buttons to get it.
Anyway, so this Thursday we've got Preston Dennett coming up, and then Sunday we have Erica Lukes, and then the following Thursday we have Paul Wallace on, who is a fascinating individual, and then we have Les Velez on the following Thursday, and then we are going to have Joshua Lewis on with us on the following Sunday. So we've got a pretty good guest lineup for Black Lotus this month. So viewers, make sure you subscribe to us and hit the little bell so you're notified every time we do this. We do this every Sunday and Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And so definitely join us for these shows. I think you're really going to enjoy them. Don't forget to hit like and please share it around. If you got friends who are into these topics that we talk about, I think they would enjoy our show. So, but anyway, I think we're going to get out of here for the night. Mike, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you,
absolutely.
Mike.
Thank you guys so much for having me back on. And
Thanks, Mike.
yeah, absolutely. And Victoria,
Thank you, Mark.
you're in good
Mike.
hands. So.
Um,
I
Mike,
learned the best.
we wish you nothing but success in the future. I know
Yeah,
you've
Mike,
got a lot of stuff coming up, and good luck with it all.
I always
you so
I always learn something new when you come on, Mike. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have some great questions. It's always a good conversation. So definitely we'll have to set it up again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
When you have time.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Victoria,
message me. We'll figure it out.
yeah, we'll do something.
Bye,
Victoria, I'm so glad you could do this. And for those of you who have just joined or joined late in the game, Victoria is going to be a regular panelist from now on. So we're very happy to have her.
Thank you
But
for having me.
anyway, folks, until next time, keep thinking and question everything.